I came home from my weekly checkup to find my favorite recliner sitting on the curb, not leaning neatly against the porch, not waiting to be cleaned, not covered like it mattered, just dumped there, half on the grass, half on the concrete, like the trash that the city had forgotten to pick up. My son came out onto the porch, phone in his hand, acting like nothing was strange about any of this. "Dad," he said casually, "Jessica thinks it clashes with the new vibe. We need to modernize if we're all going to live here." I didn't say a word. I didn't argue. I just walked past him, into the kitchen, set my keys down on the counter, and called my realtor. They thought they were taking over my house. They didn't know I had already decided to sell it from under their feet. But to understand why I had to sell my own house just to teach my son and his girlfriend the hardest lesson of their lives, you have to understand what happened 15 minutes before all of that happened. I'm 68 years old, retired, widowed. My wife, Lorraine, passed 3 years ago. Cancer doesn't argue, doesn't negotiate. It just takes what it wants and leaves you to figure out how to keep breathing afterward. This house was the one constant she left me. We bought it back when interest rates were high and our savings were low. A modest 2-story place in a neighborhood where people still wave from their porches and cut their own grass. Lorraine loved the morning light in the living room, said it made everything feel hopeful, even on bad days. After she died, I didn't change a thing. Her photos stayed where they were. Her throw blanket stayed folded on the arm of the recliner. Her favorite mug stayed in the front of the cabinet. Even though I never used it, the house wasn't just shelter. It was memory. It was proof that a good life had happened here. My days were simple. I woke early, took my meds with black coffee, read the paper in my recliner. Tuesdays were doctor visits. Fridays were groceries. Sundays, I drove to the cemetery, talked to Lorraine like she could still hear me. I wasn't lonely. I was settled. That's when my son Marcus called. "Dad," he said, voice careful, like he was stepping onto thin ice. "I need a favor." He told me he and his girlfriend Jessica were between places. Rent went up, lease issues, temporary stuff. "Just a few weeks," he promised, "until we figured things out." I didn't even hesitate. He was my son, my only one. Lorraine would have smacked me upside the head if I'd said no. "Of course," I told him. "You can stay here." Jessica thanked me when they arrived. Real polite, soft voice, big smile, the kind that makes you think someone was raised right. She complimented the house, said it had good bones, told me she loved the neighborhood. At first, everything felt fine. They took the guest room, cooked their own food, paid for groceries, sometimes. Marcus hugged me more than he had in years. I thought maybe this was a blessing in disguise. Family under one roof again. Lorraine would have liked that. But little things started changing. Quiet things. Jessica brought in throw pillows. Bright ones. Sharp colors that didn't belong with anything else. She moved a lamp to improve the energy. One day, I noticed my fishing trophies weren't on the shelf anymore. They'd been placed neatly into a box in the garage. "Just decluttering," she said sweetly. "You don't need all that visual noise." Visual noise. That was her phrase. Marcus started using it too. Then came the comments. "Dad, this house is kind of big for just one person. Have you ever thought about downsizing? Maintenance must be a lot at your age." At my age, they said it gently, always gently, like concern, like advice. That's what made it dangerous. Slowly, my routine shifted. They slept late, took over the living room. Music replaced the news. Jessica worked from home and needed quiet zones. Somehow, my recliner ended up being moved a few inches every day, until eventually it was no longer facing the window Lorraine loved. My photos disappeared one by one. When I asked about them, Jessica smiled. "Oh, I put them somewhere safe. We're just refreshing the space." Refreshing. I started spending more time downstairs. Not because anyone told me to, not directly, but because it felt like I was in the way upstairs. Jessica suggested it one evening, voice soft as cotton. The basement might be more comfortable for you, Mr. Thompson. More privacy, less distraction. Marcus nodded like it made perfect sense. I didn't argue. That's the thing about men like me. We don't explode. We absorb until something breaks. And that something was my recliner. Lorraine's recliner. The chair she picked out after weeks of searching. The chair she teased me about stealing. The chair I sat in the night I signed hospice papers. The chair that held me together when everything else fell apart. Seeing it on the curb wasn't just disrespect. It was erasure. When Marcus told me Jessica didn't like the color, something inside me went very still. I realized then that they weren't asking permission anymore. They were replacing me. Standing there in the driveway, staring at that chair, I finally understood the truth. They weren't waiting for me to leave. They were already acting like I had. So I walked into the kitchen, picked up my phone, dialed a number I hadn't called in years. My realtor answered on the second ring, and as I stared at the empty mantel where Lorraine's photo used to be, I said calmly, I'd like to list my house. I hung up before doubt could creep in. Upstairs, music played. Laughter floated down the stairs. They were celebrating a future they thought was secure. They had no idea what I had just set in motion, and I didn't plan on telling them. Not yet. Now, before we dive deep into story, tell me if you've ever felt like a guest in your own home, if you've ever watched people slowly erase your place without raising their voice. Stay with me, because what I did next wasn't loud. It wasn't emotional, but it was something they never saw coming. Let's get back to the story. After that phone call, something changed inside me, not outwardly, not in a way anyone else could see. I still woke up early, still made my coffee the same way, still nodded when Marcus passed me in the hallway and smiled politely when Jessica floated through the kitchen talking about oat milk shortages and open concept kitchens. But inside I stopped waiting. That's the thing people misunderstand about men like me. They think silence means weakness. That patience means confusion. That age means surrender. They don't realize patience is often just planning with a longer timeline. The house continued to change. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Jessica was smart about it. One morning, I noticed a family calendar was gone from the wall. The one Lorraine and I used to mark anniversaries, birthdays, doctor appointments. In its place was a sleek whiteboard with color-coded markers. Our system, Jessica explained cheerfully. It's more efficient. Efficient for who? I wondered. Another afternoon, I came upstairs to find the couch rotated so it no longer faced a window. That window was the soul of the living room. Lorraine used to say the light that reminded her of church on Easter morning. Now the couch faced the TV. Marcus didn't even look at me when I mentioned it. Jessica knows design, Dad, he said. You gotta trust the process. Trust the process. That phrase kept popping up too. My fishing gear disappeared from the hallway closet. The old radio Lorraine loved, the one that crackled when you turned the dial, was gone. Oh, it's in storage, Jessica said lightly. We're just streamlining my life right out of my own home. They stopped asking before ordering food, stopped asking before inviting people over, stopped asking, period. And the strangest part? They never raised their voices, never insulted me directly. It was all smiles and softness and helpful suggestions. That's how you know it's calculated. One evening, I came upstairs to make myself dinner. Jessica was in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, talking loudly about countertop materials. I waited. She didn't notice me. Marcus leaned against the fridge, scrolling through his phone. I cleared my throat. Jessica glanced over, covered the phone, and said, Oh, sorry. Could you maybe use the downstairs kitchenette tonight? I'm in the middle of something. I looked at my own stove, my own sink, my own kitchen, and I nodded. Downstairs, I sat on the fold-out couch with a microwave plate balanced on my knees. I didn't feel angry. I felt invisible. That night, lying in the basement, I thought about Lorraine, about the way she used to say, "People don't cross boundaries all at once. They step over them slowly and wait to see if you stop them." I hadn't stopped them. Not once. The realtor called 2 days later. We spoke quietly, professionally, no drama. "Yes," I told her. "I want a quick sale." She paused. "Are you sure? This house could fetch more if you wait." "I don't want to wait." She understood immediately. Developers love houses like mine. Good neighborhood, solid structure, immediate possession. We set the wheels in motion. And here's the part Marcus and Jessica never noticed. I started packing. Not boxes, not tape, not anything obvious. I packed mentally first. I made a list in my head of everything that mattered. Lorraine's jewelry, her letters, the deed, my documents, the things they hadn't bothered to move yet because they didn't fit the vibe. Every afternoon while they were at work, I moved 1 or 2 things into my old duffel bag, took them to my car, dropped them off somewhere safe. Slow, careful, invisible. Upstairs, the disrespect escalated. Jessica rearranged the bedroom furniture, my bedroom, to make it more functional. She suggested I sell my car. "You don't really need something that big anymore," she said kindly. "Ride sharing is safer." Safer? For who? Marcus started correcting me in conversations, interrupting, explaining things I already knew. One afternoon, I heard them talking in the living room. Jessica's voice was low, controlled. "We can't keep tiptoeing around him forever," she said. "This place needs to feel like ours." Marcus sighed. "I know, but it's his house." There was a pause. "Legally," she replied. That word stuck with me. Legally. That night, I went upstairs and noticed something missing. Lorraine's photo was gone from the mantel again. I didn't ask this time. I already knew. I went back downstairs, sat on the couch, and stared at the concrete wall. That was the moment patience officially ended. Not because of the photo alone, but because of what it represented. They weren't just for decorating. They were erasing my wife, erasing my presence, erasing my authority. And they were doing it with smiles. The realtor called again the next morning. "We have a buyer," she said. "Cash. No contingencies. Wants possession immediately." I closed my eyes. Lorraine's voice echoed in my head. "Use your brain." "Proceed," I said. Upstairs, Jessica was playing music louder than usual, laughing, talking about future renovations. Marcus mentioned something about turning the basement into a studio. I smiled to myself, because the thing about strategy is this. You don't announce it. You don't threaten. You don't warn. You let people build castles on land they don't own, and then you sell the ground beneath them. By the end of that week, everything was ready. They still thought they were settling in. They still thought they were winning. They had no idea the clock was already ticking. And soon, very soon, someone else would be knocking on that door, not as a guest, but as the owner. The day the for sale paperwork went live, I was sitting at the small folding table in the basement, sorting through Lorraine's letters. I kept them in a shoebox she'd wrapped with ribbon years ago. Birthday notes, grocery lists she turned into love letters, little scraps of paper where she'd written reminders like "don't forget milk" and signed them with a heart, like I needed convincing to remember her. Upstairs, I could hear Jessica pacing, heels on hardwood, phone calls, laughter that rose and felt like she owned the echo. That was the strange part. The house was already sold in her mind, just not in mine. I moved carefully after that. Not sneaky, careful. There's a difference. Sneaky people rush. Careful people take their time. Every morning, I followed the same routine so nothing felt off. Coffee, meds, newspaper, a few minutes on the porch. I nodded at Marcus when he passed, smiled at Jessica when she offered me one of those green drinks that smelled like lawn clippings. Trying to keep you healthy, she'd say sweetly. Healthy enough to move out, I thought. The realtor handled everything quietly. Cash buyer, developer, immediate possession. The kind of man who doesn't ask questions and doesn't give grace periods. That was important. While Marcus and Jessica were building Pinterest boards for our future space, I was signing documents in my car, parked 3 streets away. I didn't bring anything home that could tip them off. No folders, no envelopes, no change in routine. Men like me survive by being underestimated. They assume slowness means ignorance. Silence means fear. Courtesy means weakness. I let them assume. The disrespect kept escalating, but still politely. Jessica rearranged the pantry, labeled everything, told me it would be easier if I stuck to the bottom shelf. Marcus started hosting friends without telling me. Loud conversations. Beer bottles left on my coffee table. One night, I came upstairs to find my recliner gone completely. Not on the curb this time. Just gone. I stood there, staring at the empty space where it had lived for years. Jessica appeared behind me. "Oh," she said lightly. "We donated it. Someone else can use it more." Donated. She said it like she'd done me a favor. I nodded once, went back downstairs. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was upset, but because I was calculating. I counted days, timelines, keys, locks, who had access to what. I remembered every time Lorraine and I had talked about this house, about ownership, about dignity. She used to say, a man's home is the last place he should feel small. Upstairs, they had made me small. So I made plans. The buyer wanted immediate possession. That meant one thing: police presence on move-in day. Legal, clean, no arguments. Perfect. I began moving faster, but still invisible. My clothes went first, one outfit at a time, folded neatly into gym bags, loaded into the trunk, dropped off somewhere safe. Documents next. Passport, birth certificate, social security card, the original deed. Lorraine's things last. I took my time with those. Every ring, every necklace, every memory. The basement got emptier while the upstairs grew louder. They started talking about repainting. Neutral tones, Jessica said, to make it ours. Ours. That word again. Marcus mentioned knocking down a wall. I smiled and said nothing. The day before closing, Jessica handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. She smiled that same sweet smile. We drafted a little agreement, just to make things clearer going forward. I opened it slowly. A living arrangement contract. Rules. Curfews. Restrictions. Downstairs, only access for me. No guests without approval. They wanted my signature. I folded the paper and slid it back into the envelope. "I'll think about it," I said. Jessica's smile tightened for just a second. That night, I packed the last box. The basement echoed when I walked across it. I slept on the floor, wrapped in Lorraine's old blanket, listening to the house breathe one last time. The morning of the closing, Marcus left early. Jessica followed soon after. They were arguing about backsplash tiles. I waited 20 minutes. Then I locked the basement door behind me. I walked through the house slowly, touched the door frames, the window sills, the place where Lorraine used to stand while stirring soup. I picked up her photo from the garage shelf, where Jessica had left it face down, and tucked it under my arm. Then I walked out. No goodbye, no explanation, just keys placed neatly on the kitchen counter. By noon, the papers were signed. By evening, the house no longer belonged to me. And by nightfall, there was a knock at the front door. Not for me. Now, if you're listening to this and thinking, I would have exploded by now, stay with me, because the quiet part of this story is almost over. And the loud part, that's about to hit them all at once. Let's get back to the story. I was already gone by the time Marcus called. I let it ring. Then I answered. Dad, he shouted, breathless. Where are you? There's some guy here with the police. He says. I looked out over the balcony of my temporary rental. Ocean air. Calm. Steady. I know, I said. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. But that conversation, that reckoning, that belongs to the next part of this story. And trust me, they still didn't understand what had just happened. The phone was still warm in my hand when Marcus hung up on me. He didn't say goodbye, didn't ask where I was, didn't apologize. He just yelled. I sat there for a long moment after the call ended, listening to the sound of the waves rolling in below the balcony. Steady, predictable, unbothered by human drama. That's when I realized something important. This was the first time in months that my heart wasn't racing. Back at the house that used to be mine, chaos was unfolding without me. I learned the details later, piece by piece, through frantic voicemails and half-coherent texts. But in my mind, I can picture it clearly. I know Marcus well enough. I know exactly how it played out. The knock came around 6 in the evening. Firm, professional, not angry, not hesitant. The kind of knock that doesn't ask permission. Jessica probably thought it was delivery at first. She was always ordering things, rugs, lamps, decorative bowls that served no real purpose. She opened the door smiling. And there he was, a man in a press jacket, holding a folder. 2 uniformed police officers standing just behind him, calm hands resting near their belts. Good evening, the man said. I'm the new owner of this property. Jessica laughed, actually laughed. I think you're mistaken, she said, that polite tone slipping just a little. This is our home. The man didn't argue. He simply opened the folder and handed her a copy of the deed. Marcus stepped forward then, chest puffed, voice raised. What is this? He demanded. You can't just show up here. One of the officers spoke. Sir, the sale closed this afternoon. You and anyone else inside the residence will need to vacate. Vacate. That word has weight when it's spoken by someone with a badge. Jessica's face changed first. The color drained. The smile collapsed. Confusion cracked into fear. Marcus turned toward the stairs. Dad, he shouted. Dad, where are you? Silence. The basement was empty. The couch gone. The boxes gone. The door locked. That's when panic set in. Jessica grabbed her phone, dialing frantically. Marcus followed suit. Voicemails piled up. Texts came through rapid fire. Where are you? What is going on? Is this some kind of joke? Dad, answer me. I waited. I waited until the sun dipped lower, until the sky outside my balcony turned the same soft orange Lorraine used to love. Then I answered. Dad, Marcus said, breathless. What the hell is happening? I leaned back in my chair. You're standing in someone else's house, I said calmly. Jessica's voice cut in, sharp now. Gone was the sweetness. You sold it? She demanded. You sold the house without telling us? Yes, I replied. I did. There was a pause, then shouting, overlapping voices, accusations. You can't do that. We live here. This is insane. I waited for the noise to burn itself out. Then I spoke. It was my house. I said, you were guests. Marcus tried another angle. Dad, come on. We were just trying to make it work. You didn't have to go this far. I thought of Lorraine's recliner on the curb, her photo face down in the garage, the contract they wanted me to sign. I didn't go far, I said. I went legally. The new owner's voice came faintly through the phone. Sir, he said, professional, almost apologetic. They have 24 hours to collect their belongings. Jessica started crying then. Real crying. Not performative. Not sweet. Marcus went quiet. Where are you? He asked finally, his voice small now. I looked out at the ocean again. Somewhere peaceful, I said. Somewhere I don't have to ask permission to sit down. They didn't say anything after that. The line went dead. I ended the call and placed the phone face down on the table. For the first time since Lorraine passed, I felt something close to relief. Not joy, relief. The kind that comes when a long ache finally stops hurting. I poured myself a glass of water and sat there as the sky darkened, thinking about how strange life is, how people mistake kindness for ownership, how easily boundaries disappear when no one enforces them. That night, I slept deeply. No music overhead. No footsteps pacing above me. No feeling of being in the way. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. Marcus. I didn't answer this time. Instead, I stood on the balcony and watched the waves roll in, one after another, erasing footprints as quickly as they were made. Back at the house, they were packing now, rushing, arguing, scrambling to find places to put things they'd already claimed as theirs. Neighbors watched. Police supervised. The developer waited patiently. There was no yelling this time, no speeches, no dramatic exits, just the sound of consequences settling in. And as the moving truck pulled away, carrying away the life they thought they were entitled to, I realized something else. This wasn't revenge. This was correction. They had mistaken silence for surrender. They had mistaken aid for confusion. They had mistaken my home for their future. They were wrong on all three counts. I went inside, closed the balcony door, and picked up Lorraine's photo from the table. Looks like it worked, I told her quietly. Her smile, frozen in time, seemed to agree. Outside, the ocean kept moving. And somewhere across town, a house that once held our memories now belonged to someone else. That chapter was closed. The next one, that was finally mine to write. I stayed in that condo longer than I planned. At first, it was supposed to be temporary. A few weeks by the water while I figured out my next move. That's what I told myself. That's what I told the rental agent when she handed me the keys and smiled like she knew something I didn't yet. But the truth is, I wasn't in a hurry anymore. For the first time in years, nobody needed anything from me. No one asked me to adjust my schedule. No one suggested I modernize. No one spoke to me like I was an inconvenience wrapped in politeness. In the mornings, I woke up to sunlight bouncing off the ocean instead of footsteps above my head. I made my coffee slowly, sat on the balcony, let the day come to me instead of bracing myself for it. And in the quiet, I started to think about everything that had happened, not with bitterness, with clarity. Marcus tried calling again a few days later, then again the week after that. His messages changed tone each time. First anger, then confusion, then something close to regret. Dad, we need to talk. This didn't have to go like this. I think we all made mistakes. Jessica never called again. That told me everything I needed to know. Because when the house was theirs, when they thought it was, she had opinions, plans, rules. When it wasn't, silence. I didn't block Marcus. I didn't yell back. I didn't send long explanations or emotional essays. I let him sit with the same quiet I had been sitting in for months. There's a lesson in that most people don't learn until late in life. You don't always need closure from others. Sometimes your piece is a closure. One afternoon, I drove back to the old neighborhood, not to visit the house, just to pass through. The maple tree was still there, taller now. The porch still faced west. The developer's crew was already tearing things down inside. Walls gone, floors stripped bare. No trace of my recliner. No trace of Lorraine's favorite light. No trace of me. And that was okay. Because what I realized, standing there across the street, was this. The house had served its purpose. It had held a marriage. It had raised a child. It had carried grief. But it was never meant to become a place where I felt erased. I didn't feel loss. I felt release. A few weeks later, I found a smaller place. One story. Big windows. Quiet street. The kind of neighborhood where people still say hello and mind their business. I furnished it simply. One chair by the window. One photo of Lorraine on the wall. No throw pillows. No vibes. Just space that belonged to me. Marcus finally showed up one evening, unannounced. I watched him through the window before opening the door. He looked older, tired, like someone who had learned something the hard way. We sat at the kitchen table. He apologized. Not the dramatic kind. Not the tearful kind. The awkward kind. The kind that comes when someone realizes they pushed too far and can't undo it. I didn't think you'd actually do it, he admitted. Sell the house. I nodded. That was your mistake. I said, thinking. He asked if I'd ever forgive him. I looked at my hand for a moment before answering. I didn't sell the house to punish you, I said. I sold to protect myself. He nodded slowly. That was enough. We don't talk much now, but when we do, there's respect in his voice again. Boundaries. The kind that should have existed all along. Sometimes, late in the evening, I sit by the window with my coffee and think about how close I came to staying silent forever. How easy it would have been to keep shrinking, to accept the basement, to accept the erasure, to accept being a guest in my own life. That's the part people don't talk about. Disrespect doesn't always arrive screaming. Sometimes it arrives smiling. Sometimes it says just temporary. And if you don't stop it, it builds a home inside your home. Selling that house wasn't revenge. It was a boundary. A final, unmovable one. And if there's one thing I've learned in my 68 years, it's this. Kindness without limits becomes permission. Silence without action becomes agreement. But the moment you stand up calmly, legally, decisively, people suddenly remember exactly who you are. Marcus and Jessica thought they were inheriting a future. Instead, they learned a lesson. And me, I didn't lose my home. I took my power back. If the story made your chest tighten for even a second, if you ever stayed quiet just to keep the peace, if someone slowly took your space, your dignity, your place at the table, tell me this in the comments. Would you have stayed silent, or would you have done what I did? Because stories like this aren't just entertainment. They're reminders. Reminders that age doesn't mean weakness. That calm doesn't mean powerless. And that sometimes the smartest move is the one nobody sees coming. If you want more stories where patience beats disrespect and wisdom delivers the final word, subscribe and stay with us. You can also check the description below. I've linked a playlist of stories where quiet patience turns into undeniable power. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.